Okay. Good afternoon to viewers in the UK, and good morning to viewers in the United States, and maybe good afternoon or early evening to viewers in the Middle East. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Rabbi Dr. Elie Abadie, Senior Rabbi of the Jewish Council of Emirates and the Association of Gulf Communities, a physician, a scholar of Sephardic Judaism, and someone whose life and work sit at the remarkable crossroads of faith, history, healing, and coexistence. Rabbi Elie has a story that spans Beirut, the wider Arab world, Sephardic Jewish memory, medicine, scholarship, and the rebuilding of Jewish communal life in the Gulf. And I think that gives him a rare and unique perspective for the times that we are living through. Rabbi Elie, it is a real pleasure to welcome you.
The pleasure is mine. The pleasure is mine, Imam Salahuddin, to be here with you and with your audience.
Thank you. We at the moment are actually in Pesach, aren't we, or Passover as it's called by English people. Now, as we enter the season of Pesach, what do you think people most often miss when they treat it simply as a historic remembrance rather than a living spiritual reality?
Right. Well, yes, of course, this week we are celebrating Pesach or Passover, but also the Catholics are celebrating Semana Santa and the Protestants celebrating Easter. It's a week of holidays amongst Christian and Jews, and just a few weeks ago was Eid al-Fitr for the Muslims. So this whole month, several weeks, were beautiful holidays for all the three Abrahamic religions. Of course, Passover or Pesach was a historical event, but more than historical event, of course, it carries the spiritual message to it. And first, the physical historical event was that the Jews were slaves under Pharaoh, over 3,350 years ago. And for over 100 years, they were enslaved harshly. They built many of the cities in Egypt, many of the pyramids that exist today in different areas of Egypt. And finally, when the word came from God to Moses that it was time to free them and liberate them, of course, Pharaoh did not want to listen to that. He had basically not just cheap labor, but basically free labor to build his luxurious cities and towns and temples. It took almost 7 months to convince Pharaoh through the very famous 10 plagues that befell ancient Egypt at that time, and which finally Pharaoh reluctantly let them go. And of course, so that's the physical aspect of it, freedom from slavery, freedom and liberty, basically a nation to have a self-determination. Where its future and its time is decided by the nation itself and not by somebody else decided for them. Spiritually is that, according to the Kabbalah, to the mystical writings, that in Egypt there was a deep, deep impurity of idol worship, of promiscuity and all kind of antisocial behavior that brought down the Bnei Israel, the Israelites, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, brought them down spiritually to the depth of depravity and impurity. And as they left Egypt, in a sense, they shed that spiritual impurity, and over 49 days, they were able to ascend the 49 levels of purity until they reach Mount Sinai, where they received the revelation of God and the 10 Commandments. So yes, indeed, it's a physical freedom, but also it was a spiritual freedom, spiritual enhancement, if you will, spiritual elevation of the entire nation at that time.
You know how prominently the story of Moses and even the Exodus, although we don't usually call it the Exodus, features within the Quran and within the psyche of Muslims. I mean, many Muslims listening will hear familiar echoes in the story of Moses, or Musa as we call him, Pharaoh, liberation, divine justice. What do you think Jews and Muslims can still learn together from that shared sacred memory?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, it is actually the first recorded freedom and liberation of a nation in history. And so therefore became a paradigm for the liberation of many other nations and many, throughout history, to show there where there is a tyrant in which can abuse through his tyrannical and dictatorial rules an entire nation. It wasn't just the Jews. There were plenty other nations with them at that time enslaved. And so became a paradigm for all nations of the world after that to seek their freedom and leadership. And yes, of course, the Karim Quran, the Holy Quran, and at least in the first 10 surahs or so, does mention Bani Israel, the children of Israel, does mention Musa, does mention the Exodus from Egypt, and does mention the 40 years in the desert and to arrive at the land that God promised Ibrahim, the father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so after all, Judaism is the original religion, if you will. From it, the birth of Christianity, and also from it, the birth of Islam came. And so we have that common history, the three Abrahamic religions, certainly Judaism and Islam and Christianity. We have that common history, that common past, in which we yearn for freedom and liberty and self-determination as a nation and also as a religion. And so that really what makes us brothers, after all, brothers in religions and brothers in history. And from history, we learn.
Absolutely, yeah. No, my hope, like yours, is that we can tap into this shared sacred memory and find that common word, as it says in the Quran, that we can come together on. I think it's spiritually there isn't really that much between Muslims and Jews that divides us. It's always political things, and I hope that we can come to a time where we can start to transcend that, as we did in the past. I mean, it wouldn't be unprecedented, would it?
No, certainly not. If I would quantify the similarities between Islam and Judaism, I would say 85% of our religions are, if not exactly the same, very, very, very similar. It's only 15% the difference, which probably includes part of the hadith and also part of the oral law. But other than that, 85% of our both religions are exactly the same. So
I
yes,
was astonished to find this about 6 or 7 years after embracing Islam. It was actually from reading the Quran that I started buying books on Judaism and reading about Judaism, because the Quran says so many times, "Ya Bani Israel," or children of Israel. And I thought, what do I really know about the children of Israel or about the Jews? I mean, I grew up in a sort of a agnostic. My parents were believing in God, but from Protestant roots and Catholic roots. So I grew up in that kind of culture. And when I went to a Church of England school, all I was told about the Jews was they existed to prepare the way for Jesus, which of course there's a lot more to Jews than just preparing the way for Jesus. Not any knocking on Jesus, but it's and I didn't know until I started researching it. And the more I researched, the more I realized that we do actually share a tremendous amount. I mean, so much so, I've actually got a book, To Be a Jew by Rabbi Dr. And when one of my friends, who's a Pakistani Muslim, and he asked me, what do Jews believe? I says, well, we'll talk about that later. I says, but I want to show you something first. And I said, I'm just going to read you something. And I said, as I read it, I just let me know your thoughts. What do you think? So I was reading To Be a Jew by Rabbi Dr. But where it says Jew, I replaced it with Muslim. I didn't say the references from the Torah were from the Torah. They obviously sound very similar, and they could be from Quran or Hadith. And I just read him like a couple of pages. And he says, wow, that's a really good book on Islam, Paul. What is it? And I showed him. He's like, really? I said, yeah, that's how close we are.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, if I could quantify it percentage-wise, I would say at least 85%
Mm.
is exactly the same.
And certainly for the people who spiritually seek this out and try to live it, I mean, I think that's where the real difference comes, because the people who actually want this path and live it, whether they're Jews or Muslims, are we're very close. I'd
Yeah.
love now to move from the festival of Pesach and this discussion of Muslims and Jews and what we share more towards your own journey, because your life history carries so many of these themes of memory, of displacement, of continuity and renewal. And you have a really interesting story. So, I mean, as I understand it, you started your story in Beirut, which is a Muslim country, or traditionally understood to be in the Arab world. Um, but of course, you have a roots within Sephardic Judaism, and Sephardic Jews lived alongside Muslims for centuries. Migration, scholarship, medicine, and religious leadership. When you look back now, what threads weaving through your life that perhaps you couldn't see at the time, do you think that God is, like guiding you and leading you on this unique journey?
Yes, absolutely. Every step that I take in my life, I do see God next to me, leading me towards that. So, and look, without learning our history, we are condemned to repeat it, so to speak, the
Mm,
famous adage. But the history of my family dates back at least 600 to 700 years ago in the Iberian Peninsula, in the Andalus. And It was around Burgos and later on in Catalonia, near Barcelona. And then from there, because of the Spanish Inquisition and Spanish expulsion, they moved to Provence, southern France, where they must have lived there for several decades. Bordeaux, Montpellier, and a few other places, Saint-Paul-de-Vence. And from there, they migrated through southern Europe, from France to Italy, Italy to what's Yugoslavia, and then from Yugoslavia to Greece, from Greece to the Ottoman Empire, and eventually came further south to Syria, actually, Aleppo, Syria, where my grandparents and my parents were born. We know that trajectory because there have been in Thessaloniki and also in Rhodes and in Turkey, in Italy, several sighting of Rabbi Abadie, of ancestors, rabbis who were
mm,
rabbis in those communities eventually over the period of 500 years. From Syria, my parents had to escape after the partition plan of the United Nations on the 29th of November 1947, where they partitioned the land of Palestine, named by the Romans at that time as Palestina, and they divided amongst it into a Jewish homeland and an Arab homeland. And of course, the unfortunate part of it is that most of the Arab countries, if not all of them, led by the Arab League, refused that partition. And there was pogroms, if we can call them, attacks on the Jewish communities in 10 Arab countries, running from Morocco all the way to Iraq and all in between, excluding Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, because they did not have Jewish communities there. But the rest they did. They rose against the Jewish people. Some countries imprisoned them. Some countries took all their possessions. Some countries expelled them. My parents, Syria was one of those countries that imprisoned their Jews. They could not leave. They could not move from city to city. And many Jews escaped. And my parents escaped. First, my mother escaped originally 1949, right after the establishment of the State of Israel. And my father went back and forth to Lebanon several times. Finally, he was caught and basically told that he's going to be either put to death or imprisoned with the help of a conductor of a train who he knew because he had traveled few times. He helped him escape for the last time, and I could tell you the story. It's a very interesting one. Basically, the conductor told him what happened was the day before, one of the Syrian officers came to my father's business and told him, the government is aware that you have been escaping a few times back and forth to Lebanon. He was going back and forth because my mother was there and he had to bring her money to support her and to see the children. I was not born yet. But they told him, we know that. So again, the officer was friendly with my father and told him, I'm coming back tomorrow to arrest you. My father understood the hint. Basically, you need to leave tonight and escape. So he immediately contacted the conductor of the train, who also knew from before. He only took with him his, religious paraphernalia, his talit, his tefillin bag, a book of prayers, and not even a pajama, just a small little carry-on case. And the conductor put him in the wagon of sheep and luggage. And, in those days, they used to transport animals also on a train. And he told him, you better sit here quiet. He said, I cannot put you with the passengers because they're going to check, passports and documents as we stop. We're going to be stopping at the Syrian border, and then maybe 200 meters later we'll be at the Lebanese border. So you need to escape between the Syrian and the Lebanese, because if you're not caught in the Syrian, you will be caught in the Lebanese one. So he put him in that wagon. They stopped at the Syrian border. It was like at midnight or so. The officers came, searched the entire train. First for the regular passengers, and also they searched in that wagon of sheep and animals and luggage. And my father was hiding behind those luggage. He was almost caught with the flashlight of the officer. And then the conductor made some noise outside the train to distract the officer, and the officer was distracted, and the conductor right away closed the door of that wagon, leaving a little bit open so my father could open it as the train started moving. And so finally the train started moving. My father had to jump in a ravine, so that way he won't be caught in the Lebanese one. And after several hours of walking, he arrived in the morning to my mother's house. So that was their escape, and they settled in Lebanon for 22 years. I was born in Lebanon. And up until age 10, we lived in Lebanon, and then we practically had to escape Lebanon again due to the Lebanon was the Switzerland of the Middle East. Beirut was the
I
Paris
heard
of.
that, yeah.
Yes, and so I have to say we lived okay at the beginning. It was under French mandate also, Lebanon. Then it gained its independence. The government respected the Jewish community. The Jewish community grew significantly because of all of those Syrian escapees, either from Aleppo, from Homs, from Hama, from Damascus, that they came to Lebanon was a safe haven. But then after Black September, September 1970, of the civil war in Jordan, the Arab and Jordan expelled Yasser Arafat and the PLO terrorist organization. And the Arab League forced Lebanon to accept them. No other Arab country would accept Yasser Arafat and his terrorists. And so Lebanon was forced to accept them. Once they came to Lebanon, they became the fifth column. They were carrying weapons in the middle of the streets, having protests against Israel, against the Jews. One day, the picture of my father, who was a member of the religious court, him and three other rabbis, I will show you the picture, appeared in all the mosques in the big posters, and also appeared in the Life magazine of Lebanon at that time, with the caption, "These are the Zionist agents," which was an absolute lie. Completely absolute lie. So when you have a caption like this, "These are the Zionist agents," what PLO is around the corner of your house, basically you're a target for assassination. This is the picture. My father is this one, and the other two were the members of the religious court, the Jewish religious court. So we found the need to escape for our lives, and that's when we escaped to Mexico City, actually. So
So
long
far you
story.
had to travel in order to. I mean,
Yes.
this is the other thing. People don't. A lot of people within the Muslim world, they don't know this narrative. They know obviously what happened to the Palestinians and their sufferings and stuff, but they don't hear the other side. And in order to have this healing, we need to hear both sides, and we need to accept and to find a way to move forward. in a much more positive way, because this is obviously not the way. This is not the way Islam teaches us to treat people. It's not the way, within any kind of human value system that we're taught to treat people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there definitely are two refugees population as a result of 1948. There's, of course, the Palestinian Arab refugee population, but there's also the Jewish refugee population. Over 1 million Jews were again expelled, persecuted, imprisoned, or left with nothing. They took all the possession again from Morocco all the way to Iraq. Almost 1 million Jews had to escape for their life, and some of them were expelled. Hundreds of
And these are
thousands.
often from ancient Jewish communities in
Of course.
places like Iraq, and they've been there for thousands of years in some cases.
Yeah, Iraq Jewish community dates 2,500 years. The Syrian Aleppo Jewish community dates 3,000 years, and Egypt also another 2,000 years or so. So yes, many of the Jewish communities predate the Arab nation and predates even Islam that they lived in those areas, and yet almost overnight.
Well, we know from reading our own history of how Islam developed. There were Jewish communities in Yathrib and around that area, which became Medina.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, we were aware of this.
Yes, so almost overnight, that entire region became what the German would call Judenrein, empty of Jews, after at least 3,000 years of history. Correct.
But on a more positive note, you have obviously,
Well, if I may,
even with this kind of background, you've done a lot to actually move things forward, haven't you? And I mean, now of course you are a rabbi in the UAE, within a predominantly Muslim country. So it's how do you think we can turn this around? I was actually going to go a bit more into your life, but I think we'll bring this part out first, because it kind of connects. How can we turn that around?
Right. So, of course, the positive note is always that Bani Israel, no matter how persecuted, how expelled they are, they will always forge ahead and look to the future, knowing that we have the covenant with God. And so therefore we learn from the past, we don't dwell on it, we learn from it, and we move ahead and we forge ahead, and we build new communities, whatever countries we are welcomed at. And so that's what we did. The same thing that many of the Sephardim, after being expelled from Spain, they settled in the Ottoman Empire and they were welcomed, they thrived and they grew, and they formed many communities until the next expulsion, so to speak. And so that's the positive part, is that we always look forward, we thrive, we continue, we have faith in God, and we march ahead. We look at the past, we learn from it, but we don't dwell on it. Now, for me, having gone back to an Arab country as the senior rabbi, was kind of closing the circle. As I started in an Arab country, Lebanon, where I grew and I learned, and the principles of humanity, I learned them there, basically. And yes, feeling persecuted, having to escape, going to Mexico City, then going to the United States, basically fulfilling the famous or infamous phrase, the wandering Jew, from place to place. Now I am back into an Arab Muslim country, welcome practically with red carpet, respected, revered, with an open arms. I was welcomed into the United Arab Emirates by everyone, by the government, by the Emirati society, many expats, and of course by the small Jewish community that existed. And so to me was closing that circle, kind of a vindication. In a sense, here we were, if not expelled, but persecuted out of an Arab country. We took whatever we can take with us, and my parents certainly more than I did, suffered more than I did. But basically, I kind of represented that Jew that was expelled from all these Arab countries, or was persecuted from all these Arab countries. And now I'm being welcomed officially with an open arms and with love and care and respect and even reverence. To me, was like I felt vindicated. I'm back to where I belong. I'm back to my native world, so to speak. To me, was kind of basically saying we belong together. You belong here with us. All what happened in the past was abhorrent, was erroneous. This is the real life where a Jew and a Muslim can live together, or a Jew and an Arab can live together amicably, friendly, respectfully, and cherishing the similarities between our culture, our religion, and our beliefs. So to me, was closing that circle.
And there is tremendous similarity. I mean, it's like you mentioned when your father fled. It's like obviously you can only take a small amount of things with you when you're in that situation, but the things he took were his religious things. He took his religious things, and he took obviously tremendous faith to actually embark on that journey, and very dangerous journey. It's and that's something that I'm sure a lot of Muslims could resonate with, because that's something that we try to cultivate it within ourselves. I mean, if I was in a situation like that, what would I take with me? I'd make sure I've got a Quran with me,
Exactly.
and a tasbih, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is the furniture, clothing. These are all material things that can be replaced. But what's eternal, right? What's eternal is what we take with us, and the religious items that we took represent that covenant between us and God, and that's the eternal link that we have, and so that we take with us. The rest, like I said, is replaceable, perishable, but that unique covenant, that unique link between us and the Almighty, the Creator of the world, that stays with us anywhere and everywhere. Wherever we go is with us.
SubhanAllah. You mentioned that there was one of your ancestors was a famous Rabbi Abadie. Also, your father was a rabbi. Does this rabbinical tradition run in your family, or was there in your life like a particular decisive turning point and a calling that called you to this role?
Right. So the Abadi family is a rabbinic lineage family, going back, like I said, 500-600 years ago. Sometimes is generation after generation. Sometimes may skip one generation and continues to the next generation. It happens that in my generation, my father was and I am, but my grandfather was not. My grandfather was not a rabbi, was a religious man, but he was not a rabbi. Where his father was, or his uncle was, and so either goes directly or it skips one generation or so. It has been like that for centuries, and we keep that tradition. Now, for me, becoming a rabbi, it was in a sense, sometimes God leads you, and sometimes you don't know why God's leading me that way. And then
I know that feeling. I didn't plan on this initially myself. Yeah.
So I originally I was not planning to be a officially like a professional rabbi, so to speak. I wanted to be learned. I wanted to learn the holy books, the rabbinic books, the Talmud, everything that the religious Jewish. I wanted to be a learned man, but I did not want to be a professional rabbi, where that would be my profession. I wanted to be a doctor, a medical doctor, and I am. And so I came to the United States. It's an interesting story. I came to the United States to go to Yeshiva University, which is a Jewish university. Why did I come to the United States? Because in Mexico, I wanted to become a medical doctor. I was accepted to the two prestigious universities of Mexico. However, I would have had to violate the Sabbath and Jewish holidays to study there because there were exams or laboratories, and I was not willing to compromise. My religious principles, I do not violate the Sabbath, I do not violate the Jewish holidays. And so I didn't know what to do. And suddenly I discovered that there is this Jewish university in New York where I could become a doctor, lawyer, architect, whatever I want, and yet keep the Sabbath and not violate those Jewish the religious principles. And so I was accepted to Yeshiva University. And the system in America is different than in the rest of the world. Here, there is what they call the college. In Mexico, you go from high school, because high school is at the level of college, and you go straight to university, as in Europe. You go
Yeah,
straight to
same here.
university, correct? Or the Middle East. I mean, after high school was a good level. You go straight to university to whatever profession. In the United States, they have a 4 years of college. Then you go to a real university for whatever profession you want to do. I learned that basically college in the United States is a babysitting service for immature adults. Uh, you know, they have, 18 years old, they have not matured. They need 4 years to mature. Well, by the time they are in their senior years, they have matured. They can know what to be, what profession they want to pursue. So when I came to Yeshiva University, I thought I was in medical school, because I applied, on the application, there was a box, Albert Einstein College of Medicine. I crossed it. I said, that's it. When I came to register to the courses, I see I have to take literature, history, political science. I went to the dean of admission. I said, excuse me, I thought I'm in medical school. He said, what do you mean? I said, in Mexico, I was going to medical school, and here I applied for medical school. He says, no, this is America. You do 4 years of college, then you have to take a test, then you have to be interviewed, and then maybe you're accepted into medical school. I almost fainted and almost was going to go back to Mexico.
4 years is a long time as well. It's not just 2 years, or a year.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I did not know what to do with my life.
In 4 years here, you can go from studying for a bachelor's right the way up to getting a doctorate.
Yes. So I went through 4 years of college.
Or maybe a master's, a doctorate would be another year, but it's not far off,
Right. I did not speak English at all at that time. I had to learn English. In my first year of college, thank God I had professors that spoke the different languages that I spoke. I had a professor that spoke Spanish, professor that spoke French, of course, professor that spoke Hebrew. And I took my tests with those professors according to the language that I spoke, because I did not speak English. I knew how to count from 1 to 10. So eventually I finished my 4 years of college, ready to go into medical school. Medical school tells me, are you a U.S. citizen? I said, no, I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'm just a student visa. I said, oh, forget about going to medical school. He says, our American students.
Oh my gosh. After 4 years, they tell you that?
Yes, they tell me that.
They could have told you 4 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They said, our American students are going to Mexico and the Caribbean to medical schools because there's not enough spaces here. Do you think we're going to take a Mexican young man into our schools? No way. Become an American citizen, then we'll consider that. So again, I almost fainted at that point and did not know what to do. So the rabbis at the Yeshiva University, some of my older teachers, they said, why don't you, while you become an American citizen, go into the seminary and become a rabbi. Anyhow, your father is a rabbi. It's your family tradition. Become a rabbi while you become a U.S. citizen, and then you can go to medical school. And that's what I did. I went into the seminary. I got ordained as a rabbi, and immediately, and then I became a U.S. citizen. And then immediately I went into medical school and became a doctor. And even in seminary, I was already assigned a small congregation in New York to be the rabbi even before I was ordained, because they said, your father was a rabbi, to be a rabbi, you don't need to be ordained, but go ahead. So I was a rabbi of a congregation even my first year of seminary. Then I was ordained 3 years later, of course. And all along, I was practicing the rabbinate and medicine at the same time. I did my internship, my residency, my fellowship in medicine and gastroenterology, while at the same time, I had a congregation to run. And that has been the story of my life.
I didn't actually realize that you had to be a rabbi to be a doctor. So it's quite, quite a very interesting story. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's what God directed me. He wanted me to be a rabbi to serve his people. And but at the same time, I'm also doctor. So I always claim, when a person comes to me, I say I could heal you spiritually and physically.
It's a good
Spiritual.
combination. I mean, a lot of traditional sheikhs were also doctors. I'm not, but I know a lot of them historically were, and they said the same thing. So it's a great combination.
Yeah, well, in the Middle Ages, most of the rabbis were also doctors, like most of the sheikhs were also
Mm.
doctors. That was the profession. Ibn Maimonides was a physician. Ibn Nahmanides was also a physician and at the same time was a doctor, and many rabbis were also doctors. So I feel I basically emulating the great sages of Sephardic Judaism by being a rabbi and a doctor at the same time.
It's a beautiful combination. I mean, I actually went to university to study environmental science, and God had other plans for me. So it's I know how these things can go. Um, so do you sometimes feel that your life itself quietly challenges these simplistic categories that people often impose upon people, whether Jews or Muslims or Arabs or spiritual leaders? I mean, you really seem to transcend all of these categories that people tend to have.
Well, look, as rabbis or as teachers or as imams, we have great responsibility with the people,
Mm.
with any person, individuals, no matter what their level of spirituality or the level of knowledge is. We have the responsibility to teach. We have the responsibility to welcome them. We have the responsibility to care for them in that sense, intellectually, spiritually, religiously. The famous four children that we have in the Haggadah that speaks about four type of individuals, of children that we could have. Can have the wise, the Chacham, who is the wise. We're going to have the wicked child, the Rasha. We're going to have the simple child, the Tam. And we're going to have a child that doesn't even know how to ask a question. The She'eno Yodea Lish'al, we call it. And we go through it on the Haggadah because all of us as families, either we were raised in a family that we have all these four type of brothers and sisters. Some of them wanted to learn, some of them they wanted just to rebel, some others they were just simple, some other they had no idea what's flying. And yet our responsibility as parents and our responsibility in this case as rabbis, as imams, as religious leaders is to reach each individual according to their level. If it's an individual that is a wise, then of course we'll speak with them wisdom and teach them more wisdom. If the child is a rebellious, or in this case, if the individual is rebellious, then we have to reach out to them and as they are being rebellious, try to inculcate in them certain wisdom. And if a child is a simple child, simple person, not much intellectual acumen, yet we have to reach out at their level. And certainly if a person doesn't even ask, doesn't even know how to ask, which is a more of a challenging situation, we have to reach to the level. King Solomon in Proverbs said, teach the child according to his understanding, for even once he becomes an elder, he will keep what you taught him. So therefore, we have to reach each individual. And although King Solomon said a child, but for us as religious leaders, spiritual leaders, every individual that comes to us, no matter what level of understanding, wisdom, or behavior, we have to be able to reach to them according to their level so they could understand at their level what we are teaching and how we could bring them closer to spirituality and closer to God. Challenging, but that's our responsibility, I think.
Yes, it is. I know that from personal experience. um, what does Sephardic Jewish experience preserve that the modern world urgently needs to recover?
Moderation, if I could put it in one word.
That's a good one.
Moderation. Sephardic Jews are very well known to adapt to the milieu where they are, adopt part of the culture of their surrounding, and also to be able to be moderate, not extremist. And moderation in everything. That basically following the famous Maimonidean philosophy that the middle of the road is the road to follow. In fact, Maimonides, Ibn Maimun, says that that is actually the way of God, that God's way is the middle of the road. And so therefore we are obligated to emulate God based on the verse in the Torah and the Bible that says, and you shall cleave to God. And the sages ask, can you cleave to God? God is not something physical that you could cleave to. It's not a person that you could cleave to. What do you mean you're cleaving to God? How do you cleave to God? By following his paths, by following his ways. What are his ways? He is merciful, you have to be merciful. He is compassionate, you have to be compassionate. He is patient, you have to be patient. And so by following the ways of God, we are cleaving to God and God's teaching. And Maimonides is of the opinion, based on the sages of the Talmud, that God's way is the middle of the road, not an extremist. Not extreme to the right, not extreme to the left, is middle of the road. And so I think Sephardic Judaism brings that to the world. Adaptation, adoption, moderation. Moderation. And that way, you could understand the culture of where you're living. You could respect it. You could learn it, certainly, right? And you could cherish it. You could cherish it. And at the same time, you have common understanding with the people that live around you. That's, I think, what Sephardic Judaism bring. And for centuries and millennia, Sephardic Jews, like I said, for 3,000 years in the Middle East, and then in Spain, and then even after Spain, the lands that they were expelled to, they maintained that beautiful camaraderie, that fraternity, that coexistence. So, and to say basically, me having gone to the United Arab Emirates, which are the paradigm of coexistence, fraternity, and mutual respect of religion, to me was home. It was going back home, so to speak. For a Sephardic Jew, that's what we were raised. That's how we grew up. And believing that you respect, you cherish, you show fraternity, you show coexistence, and not just tolerance. It's not to tolerate.
Tolerance is not enough.
Tolerate is not a good word, because tolerate is, you know, I don't like you, but I tolerate you. No. It's acceptance. I accept your tradition, your culture, your value. I respect it. I have my own tradition and value, but I cherish it like I cherish yours. And that's how we could all live in peace and tranquility. That's what I believe Sephardic Judaism brings to the world.
And, you know, if people follow it, that's something that we have very strong within the prophetic tradition of Muhammad as well, because he himself said, do not go to extremes in your religion because you will destroy yourselves. He taught the middle way. And my mom also said, I mean, she's from a Christian background, but she always said to me as a boy, everything in moderation, Paul. If she saw us focusing on something too much, even a good thing like reading, you know, everything in moderation, go outside, the sun is shining, get a bit of sunshine as well. It's so true. I mean, I've lived my life by that. And
yes, yeah. Interestingly enough, Ibn Maimun, Maimonides, says there's only one trait that a person should be extreme, and that is humbleness. When it comes to humbleness, you have to be extreme and be very, very, not just humble, very humble, like Moses, like Moshe, Musa, right? The Torah speaks to him about him that he was the most humble person on earth. He says, why when it comes to humbleness, you have to be in extreme, very, very humble. Because if you are in the middle of the road, that means you have a little bit of arrogance. Right, because that rule that is basically starts very, very humble to very, very arrogant, right? That's the line, the spectrum from very humble to arrogant. So he says, so if you are in the middle, that means you have half arrogance and half humbleness. That's why when it comes to humbleness, you have to be an extreme, very, very humble, and not have a shred of arrogance.
I know my sheikhs taught me the same sort of thing in their own words. They always warn me to be careful of my nafs, be careful of the ego, and always look at other people as they're better than you. And I said, but what if they're not? They said, see, you've got a lot to know.
Correct.
Yeah. But Yeah, it's. Do you think Sephardic Judaism carries a different memory of Muslim-Jewish relations than the one that many people now inherit through headlines, conflicts, and social media?
Of course, look, the golden age in Spain was a golden age of the three Abrahamic religions, in
Mm.
which there was exchange of culture, of learning, of knowledge. Many of the Jews translated many of the Latin books of Aristotle, Plato, Archimedes, all of the Greek philosophers, and also the later on European philosophers and scientists. They were all translated by Jews into Arabic, and so therefore they were the conduit to that culture. And then, of course, they translated Arabic books of philosophy, religion, and academics into Latin, so the European can also learn from that. So it was an era. It was an era of tremendous academic, cultural knowledge exchange. And that is what we are yearning to recreate, so to speak, in our time. Uh, I believe, and my Ashkenazi brothers might get upset with that. I believe that if the first prime minister of Israel was a Sephardic Middle Eastern Jew, I think peace in the Middle East would have taken place long ago, from its inception of the state of Israel. The problem was the different mentality. The Europeans always looked down at the Middle Easterners, as the European Jews looked down at Sephardic Middle Eastern Jews. Somehow Europe had a lot of arrogance, let's put it that way. Not much humbleness Europe had.
Mm.
And so they come with a different attitude, they come with a different mentality, they don't understand the culture, and they don't understand this social etiquette that exists. And I think that may have created the the schism between Arabs and Jews, or Muslims and Jews. Not to go into politics, but I do believe strongly and wholeheartedly that if the first prime minister of Israel, or the first government, was a Middle Eastern Sephardic Jew, I think peace would have taken place long ago, because there would have been an understanding, a respect, a cultural respect, social etiquette that we know, and I think that would have resolved all the problems. But we can't ask of history to
Not
change.
change past, but we can
Right, you
move
can't
towards the
change it. That's
future.
what it was. That's what it was. However, we
Mm.
could still do it. Right? We could still do it. We could still recreate that era of the golden age, right? In Andalus. We
I,
can.
I actually say that to a lot of Muslims because, of course, that was a golden age for Muslims, and a lot of Muslims look back to a golden age when they were great. I says, why do we always keep talking about a golden age? We need to create a golden age now, not just keep looking at the past.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
there's no reason why we can't if we put our minds and our actions, to do it.
Absolutely. And I do believe that the Gulf area can recreate that golden age. And I believe we are at its inception again.
I hope so.
Notwithstanding the wars that are happening now, which I believe are just temporary wars until they resolve. But I think eventually that inception of the new golden age is going to take place. I believe strongly, and I'm very optimistic about it.
I am too, although I'm concerned about things at the moment, but I'm hoping that, as you say, that we go in that direction. If you could say one thing to ordinary Muslims, because a lot of Muslims don't know Jewish people, a lot of Muslims have never had the opportunity to sit down with a rabbi. So, what would you say to them?
Well, I think I would tell them, please read the Quran, at least the first 10 surahs, so
Mm.
you can get a background, historical background, and a religious background about Bani Israel, about the Jewish people. That's number one. Number two, see that we are really cousins, right? If not brothers. We are both descendants of Ibrahim al-Khalil, right? Abraham, our forefather, through Isaac, the Jews, through Ishmael, the Arabs and the Muslims. And so therefore, as brothers with one father, and then we have our Father of heaven, who's the same God, but maybe different name, then why are we fighting? We are brothers. It's like in the same family. Yeah, we may get upset at each other. We may argue with each other. We may disagree with each other, but we're not going to kill each other. We're going to love each other. We're gonna agree to disagree, or we're going to find a compromise. That's basically what I would say. Don't listen to the demagogues. Don't listen to the extremists who may take a text out of context and try to explain to you, this text tell you to hate the Jews, to kill the Jews. Absolutely nonsense. Don't listen to them. Go yourself, read the books, read history, learn history, and see the similarities between our two religions. We all the same belief in the one God, one and only God, the unique God that exists. And so once they saw that, you see, we really don't have much of a difference. No much of it. We are brothers. And so if they have that in mind, hopefully they'll push away all the politics and all the geographic issues that can be resolved. But we have to accept the right of each one to exist, to live in peace and tranquility, and to worship the religion that they have.
Absolutely.
Knowing that those two religions are very, very similar, right? They all both come from the same source, and it's the same God.
You know, one of the most beautiful verses in the Quran about the two sons of Adam, Cain and Abel, or Kabil and Habil in Arabic.
Yeah.
And, you know, when Cain goes to kill him, and he says, even Habil or Abel says, even if you raise your fist against me, I will never raise my fist against you because I fear God. And it's just, that's there in our Quran. What's wrong with people? I don't know why, you know.
It's
Yeah. It's not the religion, it's politics and, you know, other
it's
things.
a
Yeah.
demagoguery. It's unfortunate that the demagoguery. Many religious leaders they teach their congregation to hate. They incite to violence, and unfortunately, either because of their misunderstanding of scriptures, right? Either the Quran or the Bible, or because they feel they get power with that. They have power over their congregants to follow them blindly. But unfortunately, they're making them following them to the abyss and not to prosperity.
True. And what would you say to ordinary Jews who may never have had a meaningful friendship with a Muslim?
So I do say to many of my Ashkenazi brothers who, because of politics and because of uncertainties and because of the last 78 years of history, they fear to approach an Arab or a Muslim, or they don't understand them. And I try to explain to them, no, there is a lot of similarities. We are cousins. And of course, when you teach them, many of them open up their eyes. And many of them, I brought them to visit the UAE, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi, and I introduced them to many of my Emirati Muslim friends. And they really opened up their eyes, they opened up their mind, and they said, "Wow, this is a great teaching time." And yes, it's true. It's ignorance is what brings fear, and fear will bring animosity, and animosity will bring wars. But if we know about each other well, and we would not have fear of each other, and we will respect each other, we will cherish each other, and then we'll bring only fraternity and brotherliness.
Do you think God sometimes places people between worlds precisely so that they become translators of mercy?
Well, look, we do believe that whenever God puts a test to us or a challenge to us, is that we should overcome that challenge. Is not just to test us, but to improve us. That's the challenge. It's like a parent who sees a child either misbehaving or not reaching its potential. So the father puts a challenge to that child, not as a punishment, the opposite. That challenge is so that child can overcome that challenge and be able to progress and go ahead and forge ahead. That's what it is. That's how we ought to see those challenges as not necessarily tests, but basically God wants us to improve, wants us to advance, wants us to do better. And if we see it as such, then we would have learned the proper lesson.
And what do you look at in the next generation of Muslims and Jews? What do you most hope that they will inherit? And what do you hope that they will leave behind?
Well, let's start with what I hope they would leave behind. I hope that they would leave behind the hate, the violence, the discrimination. I hope they will leave behind the past history of violence also, and not dwell in it. Learn from it, but not dwell in it. And what I hope to see is that the rapprochement between them, the learning together, the respect of each other, the cherishing of each other culture and religion, and the exchange of ideas, opinions, and even of religious principles to see how the source is the same for both our religions. That's what I hope for the future generation to do, to adapt, and to cherish each other. Leave the past behind, learn from it, forge ahead for a much, much, much better future that I do believe can exist, and optimistic that it will exist. I'm sure about that. That just hope is not going to take too many years and too many casualties and too many wars to reach that future. But we hope to reach it sooner than later.
And if people can take one thing from your life and work, what would you hope it be?
Love your neighbor as yourself.
Oh, beautiful.
That's what the Torah says. That's what the Quran says. That's what the Bible says. Love your neighbor as yourself.
You're
Whatever.
not a Muslim if you don't want for your brother or sister that which you want for yourself. It's just the same
Exactly. It's
golden rule.
the same. Don't, whatever you don't want to be done to you, don't do it to your fellow. I think that's what I would like them to remember. And I believe that I lived my life as such.
Thank you, Rabbi Eli. It's always a pleasure listening to you and having our conversations. And this has been a deeply thoughtful and moving conversation, not only about Jewish life, but also about faith and dignity and healing and what remains possible when people choose depth over division. Thank you for your time, your wisdom, and your example. And thank you to everyone who has joined us for this conversation. And if this discussion has been of benefit, do share it and do continue to support spaces where Jews, Muslims, and people of all different faiths can meet one another with seriousness, honesty, and goodwill. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
have a wonderful day. And
Thank
I
you.
look forward to our next conversation or coffee, wherever that may be. We pray that God allows our paths to cross again soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. It was a privilege and honor and a pleasure to be with you. And I hope the audience, we can all learn from this all together for a better future. It was a pleasure, and anytime I'm more than happy to share with you this platform to discuss many issues that will be important for all of humanity, really.
Same. That's what I do. And so much
God bless.
appreciated. Thank you so
God
much.
bless.
God bless you.
يبارك الله في عمرك.
Yeah. Baruch Hashem. Bless you.